Let's just remind you of our breaking news this evening. And in the past half an hour, Donald Trump has confirmed he's had a phone call with President Putin in which they discussed the war in Ukraine. Let's speak now to our Moscow correspondent, Ivor Bennett. And Ivor, we've heard from Donald Trump, of course. What is the Kremlin making of this? I see, as I speak to you, that they've just issued a statement. Do you have that statement?
I do, Mark, yes. They have confirmed that this call has taken place, which is the first time they have confirmed there has been any kind of concrete contact between the two sides. And it is from the Kremlin that we've heard that the call lasted nearly an hour and a half, which is really quite significant. The statement has come from the Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov. He has said a phone call between President Putin and US President Donald Trump has recently concluded. It was a very long telephone conversation. It lasted almost an hour and a half. He said that they discussed a number of topics, principally the exchange of Russian and US citizens. Yesterday, of course, was the start of that, with this former school teacher, Mark Fogel, leaving Russia with Donald Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, after a surprise secret visit from him to the Russian capital. And we understand that a Russian national is on their way back to Russia, but that still hasn't been confirmed by the Kremlin. That wasn't confirmed in this statement. But Mr. Peskov went on to say that the US president assured the American side will fulfill all the reached agreements, which by that he means, of course, that he believes that the Russian prisoner in the US will indeed be released. Now, on the key topic of Ukraine and peace negotiations, Mr. Peskov said that President Trump spoke in favor of the rapid cessation of hostilities and the solution of problems through peaceful means. President Putin, for his part, mentioned the need to eliminate the root causes of the conflict and agreed with Trump that a long-term settlement can be achieved through peaceful negotiations. I think one thing that really sticks out in this statement, I'm just reading it for the first time now, at the bottom it says, the Russian president invited the US president to visit Moscow and expressed readiness to receive American officials in Russia regarding areas of mutual interest, including the topic of Ukrainian settlement. Now, this would be really quite something if Donald Trump, a sitting US president, came to Russia given everything that's happened in the last decade, really, since Russia annexed Crimea. The last US president to visit Russia was Barack Obama in 2013, and that was for a G20 summit. So that would really be quite something. And President Trump, in his statement, actually said that I think he reciprocated. I think he also extended an invitation to Vladimir Putin. Let's see if that happens. I think that's quite some way off. But clearly, already we've actually seen an American official here in Moscow. That was Steve Witkoff yesterday, to arrange this prisoner release. The start, it seems, or the first piece of the puzzle in this wider negotiation over Ukraine. And the starting gun clearly has now been fired with this very lengthy phone call between these two leaders. And it seems like the first of many.
Yeah, and one of the bits that sticks out for me is where Putin says in this statement, or Peskov says in the statement about Putin, that for his part, he mentioned the need to eliminate the root causes of the conflict. Now that, for Vladimir Putin, of course, can mean many things.
Yeah, for Vladimir Putin, according to him, the root causes of this conflict is not Russia invading Ukraine. It's not Moscow's aggression. He has always claimed in the last 3 years that it's NATO's fault. It's NATO's historical eastward expansion that forced Russia's hand, in his terms, to fight a defensive war. That's how it's portrayed here, and it has been for the last 3 years. They've built this narrative around the war to claim that the West is the aggressor, Russia is the innocent victim here. And clearly he's setting out the stall there, once again, ensuring that this is how these peace negotiations are viewed here in Russia. Because I think this is really interesting, actually, because when Vladimir Putin launched this so-called special military operation, which is how the war in Ukraine is still called here in Moscow. It's still presented as that. It's not called a war. It was supposed to be over in a matter of weeks, of course. It was supposed to be an outright victory. Peace negotiations, a negotiated settlement, is not how it was supposed to end, and yet that is not how it's being portrayed here in Russia. It's very much still being presented as that victory will be Russia's. You see all around Moscow these big signs saying victory will be ours, and I think no matter what happens in these negotiations, Russia will, of course, I think, even if they do get a more favourable deal, I'm sure they'll have to give up something and make some concessions. But I think no matter what kind of concessions, they will want to spin it as a victory over Ukraine, a victory over the collective West. And you get a sense of that from that statement there, that Vladimir Putin is minded to, for his part, to eliminate the root causes of the conflict, and agreed with Trump that a long-term settlement can be achieved. He seems to be conflating these two ideas, that a long-term settlement will mean a victory for Russia because he's got NATO to back off.
Yes, and to what extent we've been hearing about this swap of prisoners, and we heard a bit more about it from the Russian side today. To what extent has this kind of exchange of prisoners, which we didn't know was going to happen, or I don't think we knew was going to happen, to what extent has that sort of paved the way for the phone call even?
Yeah, I think it seems this was crucial to get the ball rolling, the first piece of the puzzle. The American who has left Russia, who's been released from Russian prison, Mark Fogel, he was this former school teacher. I think Donald Trump clearly has identified that as something he needs to do first, to buy some kind of political capital, increase his political capital at home, because this was someone who missed out on that wider prisoner swap back in August, when dozens of prisoners, both in Russia and the West, were released, the biggest prisoner swap since the end of the Cold War. His family at the time were absolutely furious that he wasn't included, calling it a glaring injustice. And of course, now Donald Trump has got him released. And I think that was clearly a very important point to get the ball rolling with these negotiations, to see if, to test the water, I think, to see if both sides wanted to do something bigger. And you got a sense of that in the statement we heard from the White House yesterday, saying this was I'm just trying to find it now, but saying it was a proof that Moscow could be acting in good faith, and it was, I think it was, as I said, the first piece of the puzzle in this wider negotiation that clearly now Steve Witkoff is going to be central to. He seems to be Donald Trump's point man for these tricky negotiations. He was, of course, credited as being instrumental with securing that Gaza ceasefire, and now he has been deployed to Moscow yesterday and is going to be deployed again, it seems, for the negotiations on Ukraine, that will not be easy at all either.
OK, Ivor, thanks very much indeed.